Adam Koebel, also known as Skinnyghost, is a game designer, a Twitch streamer, and one of the most popular game masters on YouTube and in the world. He is also a great source of inspiration for a lot of gamers, including myself. In this video, we will be talking about what makes him such an interesting person and how to learn from him to become better game masters. I'm the Social Justice Game Master, and this is Learning from the Best. 1. The Game Designer. Watching Adam GM, one of the first things you realize is how knowledgeable he is about tabletop role-playing games in general. In most of his videos, he will reference a game, a mechanic, or an event of role-playing game history to give context to the way rules are written and applied.
Well, I don't want to plug too hard, but there's this game called Truncheon Girls. Yeah, it's about 19th century female British police officers.
This knowledge comes from years of experience as a game master and as the co-designer of Dungeon World, one of the most famous Powered by the Apocalypse games. Adam has a deeper understanding of how the rules affect gameplay because he had to think about this a lot when creating his own game. Because of that, he has a lot of respect for how the rules were put together and rarely ever dismisses a rule, instead preferring to ask why weird rules were put into place and what their purpose in the game is. This is something you can also develop by looking at the rules critically and trying to understand why they were created this way. It can allow you to choose which game rules you want to apply in your sessions and which ones are too complicated or too constraining for your story. We can see him apply his unique perspective in many videos where he talks about the relationship between gameplay and game mechanics. What fascinates me is how he never ceases to think about how the rules can affect the game from a player perspective, a GM perspective, and a game designer perspective. When I was developing my own Harry Potter fan game, I often tried to adopt this triple perspective to evaluate how each rule could impact the experience for game masters and players. Link in the top right corner if you're interested in learning more about this game. I really learned a lot from this experience, and I was much more prepared to do so because I had watched Adam use this triple perspective in his campaigns. These multiple points of view allowed him and his players to understand specifically what part of the game design of their mage campaign was blocking their fun. They posted a video for the season finale, and I love the way he deconstructed the experience he and his players had playing the game.
I think what ended up being the problem is that we gravitated towards the stuff that was interesting in the game, and the magey stuff was maybe the least interesting.
Even if we wanted to do more magey stuff, the system, by design, apparently wants to push you away from doing as much magey stuff as it can.
All the rules about magic are mostly about what you can't do.
And this is fascinating to me because they could have just ended the game there, but they sat down together and talked about how the game design was interfering with their fun. They shared their experiences and made me realize some things I had never thought of before about the way games impact our experience playing them.
What do you think that early level mage play is supposed to feel like? If not,
Apparently total shit.
And that is what I find most interesting about Adam Koebel. He's like an engineer that understands mechanics and helps us understand what is happening behind the curtain. Other game masters like Matt Mercer take the role of the star of the show, but Adam is more of a stagehand who has a deep understanding of what is happening backstage. In his videos where he talks about games, he shares his backstage vision and educates game masters in a very interesting way. And that backstage understanding is reflected in his views of role-playing games. He says in one of his videos that he thinks role-playing games aren't art, but a toolset. I personally disagree with this view, but I can see the wisdom in that perspective. Adam sees game developers as people just like him who had reasons behind their decisions to add some rules. People who were products of their time and who made mistakes, but also people who intended certain types of gameplay through their rules. And that's why he avoids modifying the rules of the games he plays. It is out of respect for the toolkit, the intentions of the game designers. It also serves to illustrate to anyone watching his videos how different each game can be, even with the same players, if you just change the rulebook. Adam also has a series on his channel called Hack Attack, where he talks about rules, their impact, and how to modify them, which I would recommend to any game master or game designer who would want to better themselves. In there, he challenges our views that rules are sacred and have always been the way they are when they aren't.
So Hack Attack is GMs and game designers, me and Steven are both of those things, picking at games to try to make them do a thing we want.
Adam also knows a lot of role-playing games, like a lot. He references different games all the time. For example, in the first Hack Attack, he references the history of role-playing games and how one of the first ones, called Chainmail, set the tone of battle simulator for a lot of the early role-playing games that followed. He knows where D&D's alignment system came from and details of the era in which World of Darkness came into being. This knowledge of games allows him to compare and contrast them and contributes to the clarity with which he sees the hobby. Adam is a perfect example of how broadening our horizons is just as enlightening for role-playing games as it is for everything else. This is just another thing you can learn from Adam by watching his videos. Learning about different game systems gives you a better perspective on what role-playing games can be and do. This can help you decide better which game is best suited for your adventures, your playstyle, and your group of players. In an era where YouTube is filled with D&D games, Adam has the courage to play other games on his channel, even if that might hurt his view count on the long term. And as a GM who hasn't touched D&D in years, I find the diversity on Adam's channel quite refreshing compared to other popular channels. 2. The respectful game master. Adam isn't just a game designer with beautiful blue eyes and a smile that could melt hearts. Ah, that beautiful, charming smile. Oh, sorry. Adam Koebel is also an exemplary game master who brings respect to the table in a way that few others do. He uses and recommends the X card, and for those of you who don't know what that is, there's a link in the top corner of the video right now. Adam also talks about consent between players and game masters.
What should a GM consider first and foremost when wanting to add new mechanics to an existing game? Your players.
He makes us think about the fact that players might not consent to playing a game if some of the rules have been changed by the game master, and how the group needs to agree to those things instead of having the game master decide for everyone. He also made me realize how problematic a mind control power could be in a game if it was used by a player to take another player's agency in said game. Basically, Adam preaches respect, consent, and ethics, both in his podcasts and in his games where he applies those things. And this is a thing that I deeply respect because he is a famous personality to the role-playing game community, and this helps spread the message of respect that we need to see more of these days. I encourage you to do the same in your games. Treat your players with the respect they deserve. Be honest about the kind of game you're creating together and respect their boundaries. This will help your players work with you as a team to make the story work better. Adam is also inspiring in 2 other ways. First off, he talks passionately about his inspirations for the stories he comes up with. These help us see a bit into his creative process that involves, as it does for all creators, taking inspirations from other works. Because taking inspiration from others is usually seen as theft, it is frowned upon, but Adam shares his inspirations with his players to let them know what they're getting into and create a headspace of common cultural references for his games to exist in. And he is quite open about the fact that he steals ideas from a lot of media, saying it's how creation works most of the time. In his view, as long as you combine things to make them into something new, it is creation, not theft. This attitude can have a very positive impact on your own players. Share your inspirations. You can give your players a list of books, movies, comics, songs, and other inspirations to let them understand the context of the story you are making together. This will help your players visualize your world better and make them feel more immersed in the game's mood. Finally, Adam inspired me by having a bunch of queer characters in his games. This showed me I could do more about this sort of representation. Adam shows us in his games how role-playing games have the potential to be a medium of expression for marginalized communities like the LGBTQIA+ community to express themselves. In a political context where expression is often denied to the community in mainstream forms of art, Adam's efforts really make him stand out. This is something I've tried to add to my games, and you can too. Value representation. Introduce characters that are different from the ones seen most often in mainstream media. If you tend to have characters that are heterosexual, cisgender, able-bodied white men, you can try to introduce variety in your story to make it more realistic. Your players are likely to be a diverse group, and it can help them feel more immersed in a world to see the same diversity in your stories. Being a good game master involves making your players comfortable, but also finding players who play into your strengths. This is something Adam has mastered, as his players are truly a match for his talents. They often have a good knowledge of the system they are playing, or at least everything related to what their characters can do. Very little time is used to explain the rules, and they bounce off of each other's creativity in roleplay and in suggestions. In this sense, they're very much all engineers. They also play into the fact that Adam likes to create stories that are interpersonal dramas, and though it might not have started like this, it is what his Shadowrun game called Mirror Shades ended up becoming thanks to the players. You see, the passion with which he talks about role-playing games is contagious, and you can see this in his players who bounce off of his creativity with their own to create a story with an efficiency I have never seen in any other role-playing game video. As we see in the Tombs of Annihilation podcast, connections between the characters is more important to him than physical description when presenting the characters, and when his players play this up, Adam takes a sort of backseat to his games, letting his players unfold the experience with less interference than other game masters might. This contrasts a lot with the game master we will see in the next video, Matt Mercer, who constantly has a front and center position in his games. Neither of them is doing anything wrong in terms of the role they take, each is simply GMing the way that corresponds them best. We will learn more about Matt Mercer's GMing style in the next video of Learning from the Best. And before I ask you to like, share and subscribe, here's a summary of what you can learn from Adam Koebel from watching his videos. Look at the rules critically, learn about the different game systems, treat your players with the respect they deserve, share your inspirations, and value representation. If you like this video, I recommend you check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And don't forget to pop a thumbs up to help out the channel,